Welcome back to another episode of What's Going On. I'm your host, Elizabeth. We're going to be talking about something that has been at the forefront of my mind, maybe yours, definitely taking the national stage right now, either way. Are we seeing the beginnings of World War III? Now, I want to make it very clear that I do not think the conflict we are seeing right now is going to escalate to that point, but people are talking about it. Now, what the is going on in Iran? Where do I even start? I think there are two things that need to be said. First, this podcast was finalized on March 4th. All information I'm going to be presenting is accurate as of 2:35 p.m. on March 4th, 2026. The situation is changing daily. This is the best I can do. Second, the situation in the Middle East is and has always been so convoluted and very much differs depending on where you are getting your information. I'm going to do my best to not speculate. I just want to put some facts out on the table. But I implore that you do your own speculation after this episode. So, on the morning of February 28th, the U.S. and Israel launched joint attacks across Iran, including Tehran, the capital of Iran. Also, need to apologize right here. My pronunciation of things may not be correct, but the facts are. So anyway, the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, as well as other high-ranking government officials were killed. There have been mounting tensions between the U.S. and Iran for a while, officially because of Iran's nuclear program, which Iran claims is being researched for civilian power reasons. Donald Trump justified the attack on the 28th by saying that Iran had, quote, rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions. Now, Iran signed a deal in 2015 with the U.S., UK, France, Russia, China, and Germany, promising to curb its nuclear program in exchange for economic relief. And Trump stated just last year, in June of 2025, that Iran's nuclear sites had been obliterated. Despite this nuclear fear is the driving justification of U.S. aggression in the region, though Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this was a preemptive attack to, quote, minimize the retaliation on U.S. assets in the region. Iran has responded by bombing pretty much every country in the Middle East, so I'm not so sure that Rubio's idea really worked, but more on that later. So that's why the U.S. is bombing Iran. What's Israel's issue? Quick time jump. Now Israel used to be the Ottoman Empire. When the Ottoman Empire fell, the part now known as Israel became mandatory Palestine under British rule. Britain's colonial mandate ended in 1948, and the partition resolution was signed by the UN, which essentially split the country into separate territories for Palestinians and Israelis. The state is recognized as Israel. Palestine functionally does not exist, and the government is Israeli. Because of this, most Middle Eastern countries view Israel as an illegitimate state, and this is fueled by religious and ideological differences. Israel is a Jewish state, and the heavily dominant religion in the area is Islam. In 1953, Iran had a prime minister. There was a coup backed by the CIA and MI6, which MI6 is like the UK's CIA, if you didn't know, and an absolute monarch was put on the throne. This significantly increased the amount of influence the U.S. had over Iran. In 1979, Iran had a revolution and a new government was put into place. While it technically has a president, the supreme ruler is a religious figure and they command the military and have pretty much all the power. It's an Islamic theocracy. Israel doesn't really like this because they're already a religious minority in the Middle East. And Iran is funding the Axis of Resistance, which are non-state militant groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis to fight proxy wars against rivals in the area, namely Israel. So the U.S. and Israel bombed Iran and killed their supreme leader. The strikes have not stopped and civilian casualties are mounting. A girls' school in Iran was hit with an estimated 153 civilians being killed. At this point, Iran has started bombing back, hitting the U.S. consulate in Dubai and an Air Force base in Qatar, the largest American facility in the region. Israel has now also started bombing Lebanon, trying to drive Hezbollah out of the region. Leaders of all belligerent countries have promised not to back down, and this conflict promises to take more lives. So that's most of what's going on in Iran. I didn't even touch on what is going on domestically in the country, but relevant to note is that Iranians are some of the most oppressed people in the world, by both their own government and others. Many Iranians celebrated the death of the supreme leader. The Iranian currency collapsed very recently, and the country faces intense sanctions by foreign governments. The average school teacher in Iran cannot afford to purchase one new pair of shoes a year. Iran is an oil powerhouse, and much of its oil is exported to China. Those sanctions keep Iran from gaining all of the money from sales. Oil has not officially been discussed in regards to this war, but considering that the U.S. just invaded Venezuela because of oil, it's important to know. Also interesting, Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro openly supports the axis of resistance in the Middle East. Enough for now. This episode could take all day if we got into all of the nuance of the situation in Iran. At the very least, I hope you learned a little bit about the situation and enough to know where to look for more.